Hi, welcome back to my decorating series. We're gonna go inside, go back to the 17th floor, and continue with a single guest room. So, I had no idea the direction I wanted to take this room other than I wanted it to be a single bed. So I figured, well, I guess a single double bed. Does that make any sense? One bed in the room. How about that? But I did want to make it like a hotel space where there might be a little bit of seating and comfort and a bathroom in addition to the bed. So I went through the whole bed list to try and find beds that I thought would fit the space, and then decide on the kind of seating that might go with it, the bathroom stuff that might go with it, and kind of try and look for some of the very basic components and figure out what might group well together. So I ended up with the two beds, and honestly, they were very different from each other. But in the end, I chose the Beauty and the Beast style bed because I felt like I had more pieces to play with. I feel like it might have been harder to do a full bathroom, living room, bedroom in Nightmare Before Christmas style, although I was really hoping maybe by next year I will have some more components that might fill out a full layout. But I'm not disappointed going in the Beauty and the Beast direction because I feel like color-wise it kind of goes with some of the other colors and tones that I have been choosing on the other hotel spaces. The wood tones, the golds, the reds, the pinks. And although I don't think all of the rooms really have to marry together, it doesn't hurt when trying to figure out design and layout for it. So now I decided to go ahead and use beams, partially because I felt like I'd been using the Wanderer's cabinets quite a bit, but also because I am now out of them and didn't feel like going to Scrooge's shop. So I thought, well, let's take a detour from using the Wanderer's cabinets as walls and switch over to beams again, beams and curtains. And the only other real struggle that I had with putting a bathroom in here is that there is no door. I can't put a door on this room because it's a room within a room, and the game doesn't have anything that really works that way. So I tried to use the screens at first, and then I decided to go ahead and pull out my trusty curtains, and it helped start kind of figuring out how the room was going to block out, as it were. I think a lot of hotels that I have stayed in, the door to the bathroom actually usually is kind of in a right angle to the entryway door, but because it doesn't have its own door and can't really be blocked off, I didn't think that that made as much sense in this space. So I turned it, and now I'm just trying to figure out walls, floors. I don't think I do ceilings quite yet, but eventually I'll get to the ceilings and just like how things kind of have to block out to make sense for me anyway. I wanted to pull out the biggest pieces. I wanted to try and figure out, like the large components again before I decide to, here we go, figure out exactly how big the room needed to be. I didn't think it needed to be a full 12 by 12, but I knew it needed to be relatively large because I'm trying to fit kind of multiple rooms into one room, because that's how hotels generally work, unless you're getting into really big fancy suites or like an Airbnb where it's someone's house that's converted into, like Airbnbs aren't the only way they do that. Sometimes you can rent a whole building for, a whole cabin or a whole, building, house. I can think. I promise. But this is a more traditional hotel room that most people will have experienced if they go to a hotel in their life. So now I'm trying to fit everything in that I had already decided in the newly sized space. And it ended up being a little bit snugger than I imagined it would, but sometimes that happens when you go from taking a large room, putting things in, deciding you need to size down. Sometimes you think that you've got it just the right size, and it still ends up feeling smaller than what you expect it to. But I decided to work with it because I didn't want to make it just a big square. I liked the idea of having to kind of squeeze things in a little bit snugger because it's not a home, it's a hotel room, at least in our imagination in the game that we are creating together here. But after I maneuver some of the pieces around, it ends up feeling a little bit larger again. So I'm glad I stuck with it because I like the fact that it's a rectangle. I do like the fact that the curtains are being used to kind of create a bedroom feel, even though there's not really walls, just because it feels like the curtains could be let down and cover not only the living room and entryway spaces, but also the bathroom. Oh yeah, I dicker for so long here trying to figure out tables and stuff. Because I'm working in kind of, not cramped, but like a smaller space, it makes finding tables that fit not only the aesthetics, but the space difficult. And I wanted to put a TV in here because that's a pretty typical amenity for a hotel room. And I thought about using the viewfinder here, but it felt a little bit too much for the space. And although this TV that I do pick, the wall one, doesn't fit the Beauty and the Beast aesthetic, the viewfinder, or not the viewfinder, the memory viewer, there we go, feels way too high tech for this room. So even though the TV I choose is high tech looking, it's still not quite as out of place, I guess, as that one would have been. So now I'm just fussing with making sure the walls are lined up right. Anytime you make a room that's kind of off center, sometimes these walls get a little bit tricky to center in a way that you like relative to the objects you put in. But I think this one ended up working out okay, even though the beam that's part of the wall is offset on the door. I think that was a worthwhile sacrifice to make it line up correctly in the bedroom space. So now I'm just looking for carpeting, anything that I can kind of fill in some spaces here in the living room, the bedroom, the entryway. But I end up keeping it relatively plain, much like the other rooms that I have done so far. I keep reminding myself that less is fine. It's a hotel, it's not personal, like, it's okay. The only thing I really struggled with, and I never really figure it out, is storage, because that is something that would be really on brand, I guess, for hotel spaces, is making sure there's storage for people's things. Like, you want to make sure they can put their clothes away, they can put any stuff that they bring away, and because of the fact that the space is limited and the things I had to do to make kind of the different rooms in here was taking up more floor footprint, I guess, than might be realistic. I don't get as many like dressers or wardrobes in here. So I sacrifice a little bit of practicality to accommodate the need to create different little spaces for, you know, a seating area. Not all hotels have a couch, or hotel rooms, but I figured this room, because it was Beauty and the Beast themed, because it was meant for like maybe a single person or a couple to enjoy, that I almost viewed it like a romantic getaway kind of suite, or like maybe a honeymoon suite to some extent, where I wanted it to feel a little bit more luxurious and cush. Oh, if you didn't notice, it just happened. I go to exit furniture mode and the room almost fully reset. So I have to recreate everything I just did. I was so annoyed when that happened. It's not the first time it's happened to me in a build, but just so you're aware, sometimes that is a thing. And considering how many rooms I have done in this series, I'm surprised it hasn't happened to me more. I would say it's happened to me maybe like, I don't know, a handful of times at most. I feel like it may be only like 3 times in the totality of what I've done, but it is very frustrating when it happens. So I had to step away for a bit. And when I come back, I know I want to recreate what I did before it reset itself, but I also wanted to make sure I was scrolling through all the lists. So I kind of combined the efforts. So I'm doing a lot of scrolling as I recreate the spaces, but it's just to make sure that if there are things that I have forgotten about, or, you know, just little knickknacks here and there, things that are in weird categories, because that's a thing too. Sometimes you think something should be in a certain category, but it doesn't show up there. I think the perfect examples are lighting and ceiling. Sometimes you don't get all of the ceiling lights. There's just some other categories that are like that where you think an object should be in a certain place and it's not. So I always try and look through the lists to make sure that there's not something I have overlooked or forgotten about, or just wasn't where I thought it would be when I was looking before. And so now I'm adding final touches. I wanted to put a little bit of art. I ended up putting 2 copies of the stained glass window. I feel like it would be more impactful if I had used 1, but if it had been larger. Because it's kind of small, I went ahead and duplicated it because it worked better for me. It may be too much for others, but I just made the choice because I wanted to fill up some of that wall space. And doing some plants, doing some lighting, just trying to add those little touches to make it, you know, feel cush. Because, you know, it should. All right, well, let's go inside and check it out. So this is the first of the kind of living spaces for the hotel. So rooms that people could be in for whatever event they're here for. If they're here for a wedding or some other kind of ceremony, a birthday. And I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do besides making it feel like a hotel room. And I'm glad that we kind of stuck to not just one aesthetic, but kind of. We did mostly Beauty and the Beast stuff, and I think it turned out super cute. I really like the fact that there was enough pieces to make it work together. And I know I've repeated the curtains and the beams thing to make the rooms feel like, or to break up the spaces before, but I'm glad that I had practiced in other spaces before this room, because I think it was really effective in here. The bathroom feels like a bathroom. I like the fact that I used the bookcases on the opposite side to make it feel less plain, because the only problem with them not giving us actual wall pieces, I like how it looks at night, even though those new lamps that I put in from Lady and the Tramp do not seem to light up. I'm not exactly sure why. Some lights just seem to not want to light up. And I wish they would give us real walls, because I would like to be able to hang art on the wall or a mirror or some other piece. So the only problem with using not wall pieces to make walls is that they end up looking very, very plain in the end. But I think for where the plain walls show up here works well for the fact that it's a hotel. Like, it makes sense to not have a ton of personal objects, knickknacks, whatever in this space, because anybody could stay here, and it's really more about the vibe than it is about the personal touches. That's it for today's decorating adventure. If you liked this video, a thumbs up is a great way to let me know, and a subscription will keep you up to date on my latest shenanigans. If you want to hang out with me live, I stream on YouTube and Twitch on Thursday evenings and middays on Sunday. I hope you have a lovely day, night, time, wherever you are, whenever you are, and I'll see you next time.